Okay, so let's get started for today. I'm going to take a look at two 14-day challengers. And if you want to know what the 14-day challenge is, just go to istebrak.com and click on the community tab and scroll down. Basically, it's a portrait challenge, and every piece that you paint should be submitted to our community. So go to the Reddit icon on the top right, and that'll take you to our community where you can submit your work for critique. 14-day challenge is painting a portrait 14 days in a row or 14 attempts in a row, 3 days each. It doesn't have to be 14 consecutive days. The point is that it's teaching you how to be consistent with your work, how to be consistent, how to have better discipline, how to show up to the canvas. When you have that checkpoint, when you have that like check line, that finishing line, it's really important. It really helps you be a little bit more goal oriented. Gore oriented. Don't be gore oriented. And I mean, if you want to, if that's your style, go ahead. Anyway, so then you paint that portrait 14 days in a row, and then you start to see improvement. And the key between each portrait, you have to get a critique. The key is the critique. And you have to make sure that you get good critique, not just compliments from your mom and dad and your friends. It's actual critique. Hey, this looks off, this looks weird, blah, blah, blah. They don't even have to be artists in order to critique you. They could be just regular, normal people who don't do art but can still see because they have an inner instinct, a visual instinct for what looks right and looks wrong, looks off, looks normal. They'll be able to tell you that looks a bit weird this way, that looks. Most of the time, non-artists are right about what they see. They're pretty honest. They'll surprise you how much they can see. So it's not just about getting a really more skilled than you artist to critique your work. That's not the secret. You can get artists from all levels, skill levels lower than you, to critique you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And people sometimes just see something you don't. And sometimes they'll see something, most of the time, they'll see something a more skilled artist didn't see. So, and the more you discuss and the more you critique other people on the community, the more you'll get critiques back. So the most important announcement really is the masterclass release. I'll be uploading a bit more information on that, like what is a masterclass, why should I get engaged in a masterclass schedule, why should I take on the challenge. Well, all of that stuff, I'll be making a video very soon answering all of that. It'll also give you little clips and sneak peeks into the masterclass and what is in it. But my masterclass basically is a portraiture, front view, portrait, multicolor masterclass. And it is comes with a mini book detailing all the lists and all the things you could possibly ask about the process. 4 hours of footage. One of them, the most important one obviously, is how to paint the portrait in grayscale. And the second one, the shorter one, which is just an hour and a half, is how to paint in skin colors and different skin tones and what they require. It comes with my brush sets. It comes with the masterclass PSD file that I used. It comes with a 3-month study schedule. That 3-month study schedule is really important because it basically gives you a week to do each 14-day submission. And it's actually really, really the perfect reflection of what my private students do with me. So it's like a clone of their study schedules. 1 portrait a week, form studies, master studies, and they're all basically, as the weeks develop, assignments get more and more complex and more difficult. But it is very beginner friendly. The entire thing is beginner friendly. You basically start with a sphere and end up with the faces that you see here. So it goes through every possible step, like from the Big Bang all the way down to actually having a portrait. So it is extremely beginner friendly. It is good for students who are advanced as well, if they're looking for that final push in their realism. It covers polishing, it covers edge control, it covers contrast control, you name it. My masterclass has it. It is everything I have trained for and learned in the past 10 years of teaching, 10 plus years of teaching. And I finally released something like this. It was supposed to come out as a book, but I didn't want to write a book because there's just so much to do and so much to display and so much technique and diagramming and demonstration and before and after and all that, that it would just been a waste of knowledge to throw it an effort to throw it into just a text. So I did a combo of the both. I did a book version, a mini book list for those who are text oriented and list oriented technical thinkers, and I did the demonstration, a 2.5-hour video for those who need the visual aid in order to see the fundamental in action and what's going on. So please consider buying it. It's $90, but if you use the code LAUNCH10, LAUNCH10, you'll get 10% off. As the months progress, I will be coming out with flash sales, 20 or 10 or 5 codes that one can use for those who attend certain streams. Community challenge winners may get the masterclass for free. 20% off, 30% off sales. There's going to be a 50% off sale store-wide every year in Christmas time. And then, you know, Cyber Monday, all that stuff. So if $90 is a bit too expensive, or $80 right now, if $80 is too expensive at the moment, there you can always wait. But thank you to everyone who's bought it. I hope it is going to change your art. I hope it, not just your portraits, but it teaches you the basic skills in reading references and reading form, knowing how to build with 3-dimensional objects in 2-dimensional space. It teaches you all of that. And it all starts off with the most important thing, the light on the form and its core shadow. That's the first step. That is when matter existed basically and then became a portrait. So I teach you the portrait as a building, not just as a style. Every portrait is not, it's not about developing my style or anything like that. It's mostly about learning how to be sculptors with 2D medium. So let's get started on today's class. And again, istebrak.com/store to get a copy. You just have to click here. It'll take you to my Gumroad. And then from there you can look at the list of items it gives you. Let me just make sure it doesn't take me to my dashboard. It takes me straight to the item. But yeah, here it is, the total list of everything it includes. Have a look through this, read through it, and of course leave behind reviews if you'd like. Thank you for those who left 5-star. I really appreciate it. Everyone was saying that it's a lot more information than you expect for $90. This is basically the equivalent of my $600, $800 classes. That's private tutoring one-on-one. That's why those are more expensive, because they're dedicated, they're long-term students with me for a year. Obviously this is a single masterclass, 3-month span, and it's obviously individual to you. You buy the class and you follow the schedule, and it's much more affordable, but the knowledge is no less than you would if you were private tutoring with me. So please consider buying it, especially now that there's a promo code out. The promo code only lasts for 100 sales. So the first 100 sales get the promo code price, and that's for, you know, everyone who needs that $80 price. If you can afford the $90 price, you don't have to use it. But of course, it's for those who would like that $10 off. Let's get started on today's class. So these are two 14-day challengers at two very different levels in their journey. Let's cross-examine them and talk about what one has, what the other doesn't have, and how it doesn't matter what skill you are or where you are in your journey. Sometimes you just don't have someone who you believe is less skilled than you. You just don't have what they have, or sometimes you guys are both extremes of the same mistake, or sometimes that's why working in a community is so exceptional. It's amazing. It changes your experience of art completely. If you're an artist with no community, it's like it just doesn't make sense. An artist should always have a community, in my opinion, especially a student. And the reason is that you don't know what you don't know until you see others do it, and then you don't know that you didn't know it until you saw it. So the very art of knowing anything about not even knowing, like I know it's a bit of a riddle, but it all comes from community, being able to know what you don't know and how to get there, and to know that you never even were thinking about that level of anatomy or edgework or contrast or whatnot. Terminology you were completely oblivious to, habits you were oblivious to. The 14-day challenge is like an x-ray of your mind, of your art. That's why every student who books with me, I make them go through at least 3 installments, 5 installments of the 14-day challenge portrait. Even if they don't even want to do portraits and they didn't apply to do portraits, we do the environments they applied for or the character design, but portraits are a staple assignment no matter what their chosen topic is. It's an added homework. Because the portrait is the perfect representation of what they know and don't know about form and light on form and form theory. So before we get into form theory, there's different layers obviously to painting a portrait. There's the anatomy layers, and then there's the form layers. The anatomy layers are like, did you choose the right size? Does it look like the right, gender that you intended? Does it look like this or like that? Whatever it might be. And then the form layer, the layers of form is mostly, does it make sense? Does the light that shines on it look real? Is the physics real? Is the physics of the world the character is in real? And does it promote a wreath? So both of these portraits, I'm going to try to critique them at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So like skipping between the two of them and talk about how they help each other. So for this one, all right, so this one is a day 3. The other one was a day 13, I think. And so right off the bat, the first thing that you see is the head size. Head size is this thing that a lot of you struggle with and didn't know you had issues with. First of all, your background is extremely bright. Way more bright than we ever needed it to be ever. All right, and your background is just a touch too dark considering the highlights in the eyes. Okay. And then the liquify tool, I'm going to just use it here for this one. The head is too high. Look at the similarities in beginner mistakes, but I call them beginner mistakes not because you guys are perma beginners or anything like that, but because they are mistakes that come from beginner habits or beginner issues in anatomy or misunderstanding that stick around even until you've perfected your form. Anatomy, form makes anatomy happen. Form is what is anatomy basically, but it's not the science of the anatomy, it's just the matter of the anatomy. Form is the matter of the anatomy. Write that back. So form, just because you studied how a fold works doesn't mean you understand human anatomy. Do you understand what I mean? So just because you're on day 13 and you have great values and things are really well blended and you got great blocks doesn't mean that you would have seen that problem with the head size. That head was extremely small and the other one was extremely big. I wouldn't say extremely, but yeah, they were pretty off. They were on the other opposite ends of the spectrum. So first, basically how to make a head look proportionate. It's just the half of the head size below the eyes, I would say, or below the eye line down here. So just around the ear eye line, you want to just duplicate the rest of the head size without the chin. So it's actually just an extra face and an extra eyes and nose space. That's really all it is. Every head is different. That's why I don't want to give you a specific size, because mostly we want to think about average head size for the most applicable, commercially friendly portrait, right? We don't want to study an old face and that's like the best face we can draw, or a baby face and that's the best face we can draw. See the problem before? Very, very small. Because then that's our staple and we accidentally make these mistakes. Like for this person, you added an extreme distance between the nose and the mouth. It's made the character look very old, and that's thrown off your 14-day, the purpose of the 14-day challenge, which is to get you to a point where you have a face that is extremely easy to execute, really accessible to you skill-wise. You don't have to work too hard to grab it, to get it, to have it there when you need a freelance job done quickly, or study done quickly, all of that. You want to be able to use this worldwide, basically is what I'm saying. So having these issues in the head size and the distance between the nose and the mouth, you've added accidental age you didn't know you were doing, and that also messed up a little bit of your skill, what skill you were coming through. As you can see, the changes I'm making have nothing to do with form. They're not form related. They are specific just to the anatomy and specific to human, just whatever makes a human look realistic. The other thing that I've noticed between both of you guys is one of you has eyes looking down and one of you has eyes looking up. So let's talk about that really quickly. How to make eyes look like they're just looking forward. Well, get them to sit in a point where they are in between the line of the inner and outer corner of the eye. The eye, if we were to draw a line between this corner and this corner, it should cut across. All right, but where the eyes were before is that they were above that line. Look at the line between the inner and outer corner. The eye is above that line, and now it's below that line, or on that line. Below that line means she's looking down. So I'm just gonna try to make them look a bit more symmetrical, and then to make them look like they're looking at the front, you know, just at us, focused and all that, we're just gonna cross the eyes slightly. And then I'm just gonna tuck in those inner corners of the eye, which were very, very droopy or floopy. They were just a little bit kind of like a balloon that was losing its air. Like they were just like they were just like you can see they were just stretching away from the eye. All right, and let's take a look at the changes now. So before, well, let me try to get it to where we were. All right, before, after. Before, looking down, mouth was low, after. And then the chin, now that I've moved the face around, the chin can probably get some symmetry as well and get tucked back up. Head's just a touch long. And the jawline, so I'm just gonna pull out the jawline. Okay. And then try to make the base of the neck cylindrical if you can. And then just giving more anatomy to the neck, basically just making it cylindrical and kind of indenting inward like a concave shape. Okay. So anatomy is not theory. There's no anatomy theory. Have you ever heard of that before? No, there's no such thing. There's techniques about how to make anatomy and form merge together, like that spiral technique or this guy's method or that guy's method. It's just ways to, like drawing that and then drawing that and then drawing that box and then finding these are ways to marry anatomy and form together so that they happen at the same time while drawing. Basically, the spiral leads you up into a more three-dimensional idea of where the perspective is on the face. The symmetry line helps you find the eyes, etc. So what's happening here is that the changes I made, they're not theory in the sense that there's no anatomy theory. It's just you either have realistic anatomy or you don't. It's form that has theory. So how do we block first? Do we use the sphere? Do we use the cube? That's all theory, and I think it's all pretty fluid. Anatomy theory it's different study by study, scenario by scenario, as long as you remember core shadows and light source are important. So now I'm talking about form theory. Sorry, did I say anatomy theory? Form theory, I mean. Form theory is basically where's the light source? The light source is the vanishing point. The lower half of the sphere should have most of the shadow. You should block planes to have more realism. That's not really up to debate because you need planes to make it make sense. But it is up to debate in that it is one of the ways to apply those clean lines. You can use lasso. You don't have to block. You don't have to use a blocking brush, etc. That's basically what I mean. But I always recommend blocking brush. And then Form theory also has a little bit to do with focal point, you know, reducing the focal point, the periphery vision of the eye, the lips. By the time you get to the lips, they're a lot more blurred out. And then for this guy, same thing. The eyes are looking down, but now the line between the eyes, inner corner and outer corner, is beneath the inner, the eyeball, that the pupil and the iris, sorry, are beneath. So now I'm raising them so that they cut clean across in the middle. And that's how you make eyes look like they're looking forward in your images. You guys have a lot of issues keeping eyes looking in the right direction. The whites of the eyes, so this is what I mean, by the way, inner corner, outer corner, the eye should cut clean across the middle of the two. All right, if it's beneath slightly, if it's above slightly, that's when you have them looking in the wrong direction. And then we've got the whites of the eyes, which are extremely dark. Just because you're painting a dark-skinned person does not mean the whites of the eyes also darken. There is a slight pigmentation in the whites of the eyes of an African, deeply African skin tone versus, let's say, a white northerner Russian ethnicity. There is a difference. They're slightly more yellow and slightly darker on the edges. Even the pink gums may be darker for an African person. But definitely not so much that it looks bloodshot. Bloodshot is bloodshot. It doesn't matter. And the whites of the eyes are usually white no matter what we're talking about. So generally make them brighter than the nearby skin. If you made them as dark as you did before, it just looks demonic. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just cleaning that up. Very little people today on the stream, and I really encourage you guys to bookmark my Twitch and please join me on the streams. The streams are important because that's where you guys can ask questions. They're free. You get to see the full video unedited, and it's every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So please consider joining me on streams whenever you get a chance, whenever you have an opportunity, because that's what this is all about. It's creating a class setting for you guys, keeping you accountable with your education, and it's great fun when we all get together. Okay, and then I'm just going to add the shadow of the pupils on the pupils and the iris from the lashes. They're a bit too crossed, so you kind of overdid it. So do you see what I mean? You guys can critique each other because your mistakes aren't far off from each other. Okay, so the nose is too small. If you are painting a person of African origin, Asian, something like that, usually the septum in those types of faces is a bit wider. And the septum is level with the nostrils. So meaning they're all on the same line. And the nose felt too small for that age, considering the jawline you're applying. I want to get rid of that expression in the mouth. There seems to be some kind of expression, either thinking, or I'm not sure what to call it. Happy, but thinking, I'm not sure. But I'm getting rid of it now. And it seems like you tried to do radial shading on the edges, but that resulted in, the pigmentation is a thing. For instance, people of my culture, Asian, all of that, we always have a bit, the darker the skin, the more pigmentation we have around the mouth. So it makes sense to the skin to have it, but I feel like that's not what you were going for. You were going for the radial shading in that area. I'm going to keep it, but I just want to remind you that your radial shading started too dark. You need to lower your opacity even more. And if you are having issues with your opacity and you're like, oh, I'm not even seeing anything in my first two brush strokes, you're not supposed to be seeing anything in those first two brush strokes. So now this is form theory again, and I'm just encouraging the sphere to feel more three-dimensional at the top. And bigger indentation. If this was male, it looks like a young boy. It does not look like an older male. And it does look a bit feminine, but because you flatten the eyebrows, it also just reads as generally androgynous, which I don't recommend for 14-day challengers. Pick a specific gender and go sex and go for it. Just because you should not be relying on androgyny to pull off skill. You should be hireable. People should be able to hire you for what they want their stories to look like or characters to look like in their stories. And it takes a lot more skill. Only really skilled students. It's a late game challenge to paint believable androgyny. It's actually a very hard, high skill assignment. It's not something I recommend to beginners. So when beginners do it, it's a sign that they are doing it accidentally, that it's just not something they intended on doing. All right, and these are non-really race anatomy decisions. It's just the lower eyelid should end with the lower eyelid. Lower eyelid should not end way after the lower eyelid waterline ended, right? They're one and the same. So why don't you guys ever end your lower eyelids at the same time? And then I'm just cleaning this up and connecting it back up to the eye. That's the temple value here on the side. I'm using it carefully so the temple still reads as a temple and not with upper cheek value. And then I'm just lowering the size of the lower eyelid a little bit as well. So it feels more sculpted this way, yeah? It feels more realistic. And then I'm just gonna put a halfway shadow for the chin and just make the lips more three-dimensional. So this is your day 3. You have a ways to go, but this should get you started on having a bit more anatomy read just at the start. And a bit more form theory, just making sure that you are following the rules. You're thinking about form theory, basically. You have a bit more form language. It makes more sense. A bit too much shadow on the edges, almost looks like eyeshadow. Your blocks are good, but they're not clean. And I'm just adding some highlights here and there. And your radial shading for the nostrils is good, but your symmetry for the nose is a bit off. And just the general structure of the nose was a bit off as well. One thing I don't recommend, maybe because they're later in their journey, but one thing for early students, maybe up until day 5, you guys should not be drawing the pupil in the iris. It's just going to look really cheesy. It's just going to be big. It's going to be in the way, just like you're doing right here. Try to get the realism to get maxed out with the pupil and the iris missing, because as soon as we take it out, it's now back to being boring. So that student who's missing the pupil and the iris will redirect that rendering attention back to what matters, which is the edges, the contrast, making sure all edges are present and the resolution is high and the painting feels rendered and finished. So they'll redirect all their rendering energy into something else. Because take a look, there was nothing going on without the pupil and the iris. You didn't have a lot happening. Not a lot of eyebrow texture. Not a lot of contrast everywhere. Lower eyelids weren't really developed. Eye socket line wasn't developed. These are all things you should put in some time researching. Just check my video history on YouTube. I've got a video on everything you could think about. It's all available and it's all free at the moment. So, I mean, it's going to be free forever. So there's years and years of video history on eye socket, on 14-day challengers, on blocking, on how to maintain symmetry, on how to make eyes more realistic. These are all things ahead of you now in your journey. So please make sure, for the artists who did this one, please look into that. And then for you, you can see how much contrast I had to bring down. I mean, it was almost all of it. You had just pure white background, just unacceptable. And then you had a square canvas for a vertical portrait. Like, it's not right. You should make the canvas make more sense with the portrait. I brought that contrast all the way down, and the head size, as you can see, and the placement of the mouth. and you still had this like sour look to her, this expression that she had, make sure that your expressions are neutral, because you can see how they affect what you're painting. It's accidental expression is a mistake. Write that back to me. It does not mean that you know, you have an expression so you have more rendering points because you have an expression. Accidental expression is a mistake. It's as much a mistake as having bad blocking. It does not mean you have more skill if you did something accidentally. Intentional expression is a whole other story. You're telling the story of your characters. Okay. Yeah, so make sure that if you are going to do an expression sheet, you can also look that up in my video history, that you have an idea of what the basic expressions are, and that's where you should start. So after you're graduating this and you're almost done with the 14-day challenge, and congratulations as well. I'd love to see your day one and how it all looked. Please upload all of that together so I could take a look at it. Do an expression sheet: basic sad, basic happy, basic bored, basic angry. And then out of learning these basics, you can start mixing them. Angry and happy equals evil. Bored and sad is depressed. All of that stuff. So happy and bored is something else. I don't know what's happy and bored. Horny. Oh my god. What's another weird combination? Angry and happy. I already did that one. Happy and bored is content. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of gray area. Crazy. There you go. So there's a lot of gray area in expressions, and it's really fun. So please make sure that you're trying that next up in your journey, in your 14-day challenge, kind of like your post 14-day challenge assignments, which is it's always 3/4 view, 14-day challenge right after this one, and an expression sheet. That's the basic curriculum. It's pretty universal, and you've seen me talk about it many times. I fixed up some of your values. Let's take a look at the before high hex code. So you got, where are you? Merge down. See that? So look at your patchwork. Look at the cheekbones. Your cheekbones had highlights below the cheekbone. Why? The cheekbone is facing the light. So we redirected that back upward. And then now you can add blocks for the highlights, but only at the tops. Up here and here. This is the part that can catch the light, that can get those highlight blocks. All right, so this is blocking highlights. And if you are having trouble with your 14-day challenge, that's why I called my masterclass the 14-day challenge companion class, because it takes you through every step. Every possible block you could block on the face is listed to you, ready to go. You just have to do the act. You just have to do the action. It separates mid-tone blockers from highlight blockers, the list on the text that you get, the PDF mini book. It's everything you may need. It's the perfect companion to taking on the 14-day challenge, perfecting your portfolio, perfecting your portrait so your portfolio has a strong spine to it. I believe, it's just my belief, that every great portfolio, the most strong part of it, the strongest part of it is portraits. You can tell when you are when a portfolio, when it has weak portraits, you can tell that this is a real, this is a really technical leaning portfolio. It's almost like an architect's portfolio. It's got less world building, because a world needs people, and if you don't have portraits, what do you have? You have just technical, like, blueprints, like, that's it. So I believe, it's my belief, that if you can paint people, you can paint a world. Of course, there's environments and atmosphere and perspective and all of that. All that's beautiful as well, and all that should be in a portfolio, but it's the portrait really that does all the work. That's why I spent more time talking about portraits than anything else, because we want to make people characters, tell stories, build reflections of ourselves on the canvas. And the best step to take towards that is the 14-day challenge. Challenge yourself, perfect your portraits. It doesn't take a long time to fix your portrait skills. especially if you already have a history of art or sketching and all of that. The more skill you have going in, the easier the challenge will be. And honestly, the opposite is also true. When you have zero skill going in, it's much easier to teach a student who doesn't have bad habits, because we could just start from the ground up. I think everybody can draw an eye. Everybody can draw two curved lines meeting at 2 points. Anybody can do that. It's not impossible. And then if you can do that, you can add blocks for each one. You can understand the sphere. You can understand the light on form. It's not impossible. What is difficult is discipline, is hard work. It's the same thing that would challenge you anywhere else. Working out takes dedication. Any goal that's long term takes a lot of vision and dedication and faith. So if you don't have any of that, you're going to have a hard time doing a 14-day challenge. How do you get that? How do you get faith in yourself? How do you stay goal oriented? How do you believe in long-term goals, long-term decisions? How do you believe in the unseen of the future, and what it might look like if you applied a little bit of work towards it every day? You do it by challenges like these. You do small things every day towards a common goal, and then time will pass by anyway, and you'll end up more skilled than you ever imagined. So believe in that. That's why it's 14 days. That 14 days is nothing. It's just me tricking you into developing a habit. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to develop a habit. So it's just that 14 days is going to turn into 6 months of discipline. Those 6 months from now, if you did a painting a week or painting every 2 weeks, who knows what your skill will look like? It will just skyrocket. So believe in your work, you guys. Let me show you the before and after for both pieces. Two completely different skill levels. You can see the size of the head and the placement of the eyes. And then I could just show the eyes before I got rid of them. You can see that they had similar issues, but were two completely different points in their journey. And for this one here, very skilled artists, but some strange decisions with their canvas and with their lips and eyes. What were you doing? We're using a reference. So before, after, you're not a far jump away from having more believable form. I really recommend you revisit the form studies. Form studies are not beneath you. Form studies are above you. They will always be the god of your life. Studying the core shadow, studying the cylinder, you will never shake that off. You will never at any point paint a face that's realistic or paint a realistic space that doesn't have core shadows. There is no skill level that no longer needs core shadows. Write that back to me. Core shadows will be in your life forever, just as they are in our lives everywhere we look. I look here, my glasses are casting a shadow. My lint roller has a core shadow in the cylinder. They will always be there. There will always be required. So how do you expect to shake off form studies or think that form studies are beneath you? They are not. You will always need them. And I encourage you to do more form studies because you had issues with your form, the top half, lower half, all of that. Both of you guys should use it. Congratulations on starting and almost finishing your 14-day challenge. Don't flake. Don't stop. Don't forget about it. Don't change your goals. I mean, everybody changes goals, but believe in this. If you don't want to do art, don't do it. But just try to finish this 14-day challenge because it teaches you discipline everywhere in your life. It teaches you how to work harder and give it your all and be consistent in many aspects of your life. It's like the secret to getting better. Every person who's done one has improved. There's no way you'll do a 14-day challenge and go backward. You're only going to get better. You're only going to have more skill at the end of it. And if you are interested in attempting the 14-day challenge with my masterclass, just go to istebrak.com/store. You click on this, it'll take you to the Gumroad. And then on the Gumroad, you can click on the item and it'll explain everything that is on the masterclass. So 2.5 hours of beginner-friendly, comprehensive grayscale portrait, color, 7,000 words textual instruction, pre-made portrait template. So if you guys are want to try a different kind of face alongside the tutorial, I pre-made some templates for you. I will update those and add more as time passes. Custom brushes, all the brushes that I use, so you can't say, oh, I didn't have the same brushes, so I can't duplicate what you did. You have my exact brushes on Photoshop. And a 3-month study schedule, as I mentioned, and all PSDs. More stuff is coming, more updates. I've already updated it twice for different little errors I found here and there. If you find any kind of errors and stuff like that, message me on Instagram. My Instagram is just Istebrak, and I'll update it as soon as possible. And leave behind some ratings. I would love to see what you guys think. Is there something that you want to change? Is there something that you feel like it's missing? Please let me know. That all of that helps me make a better product for you guys. Thank you to everyone who's purchased it. And soon I will have a 3/4 view masterclass, which is a lot more difficult to create because it's more perspective and more instruction. That will be out sometime soon. Maybe next year, maybe by the end of this year. And of course, there's the male to female or female to male, or comparing the two together, which might be added to this masterclass. So if you already bought this one, you might also just get that free video added to it in time. If you want to submit your work for Critique Hour, go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon here. That'll take you to our subreddit, which is where I pulled all the work that I looked at today, including the 14-day challengers that I saw. So please make sure you guys are joining the community. If you learned something today, please consider joining as $1 on Patreon as a watcher. It's just a way to keep the community alive for years to come, to keep it independent. If everybody joins as a $1 patron, really I don't have to worry about views anymore or anything like that. And Patreon will be where I announce most of my meets, streams, all of that. And I'll let you guys go. Thank you everyone for coming today. I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. The 17th onward, I'm not sure until when I'm on vacation. Actual vacation, not staycation. It will be actual vacationing. And I'll be out of the house, hiking and all of that fun stuff. So I will not have Critique Hour on the 21st or the 23rd, possibly 28th and 30th as well. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll see you guys next class. Bye.